Hey friends, it's Melvin. Thanks for tuning into this episode. Here's just a few quick things I wanted to notify you guys about before we get started. First up, very soon, new episodes will be releasing Wednesday mornings rather than Tuesday. So don't panic if you don't see a new episode on Tuesday. Just wait a little longer and you'll see it in your feed. Second, we've introduced a mailbag. Check those show notes and toward the bottom you'll see a mailbag link. You'll then be able to text us any questions you might have about movies, the movie industry, or any movie/Christian related questions you might have. Then we'll respond in a future episode, so send us your questions now. Up next, Patreon polls, which are available to Patreon supporters at the $3 tier or higher, have been updated. Supporters can now suggest films or shows to be reviewed at the end of each month. The two most liked submissions will become the options for the Patreon poll, so if you want to hear us talk about your favorite movie or show, join our Patreon and start campaigning. And lastly, whether you're a new or longtime listener, please consider writing a review or rating the Cinematic Doctrine podcast on iTunes and Spotify. Apart from financially supporting on Patreon, these are the two most helpful ways to support the show. And that's it. Enjoy the episode. You're listening to Cinematic Doctrine. Hey, if you just press play, you just missed 39 minutes and 30 seconds of us talking about Morbius and how it got re-released to no fanfare, almost like poetry, it rhymes. And then we went and talked about an article. Dan, what was the article titled? If people were in the group, if people are just online, they probably know it. It was
I posted an article, and I said just previously for our Patreon listeners that I wish I had thrown up a qualifier that I don't agree with the very clickbaity title of the article, which is "The MCU is not art." And I'm not saying this is a way to respond back to critics via podcast, but I genuinely would like to see people responding to the article, reading it and actually engaging with the criticism and ideas put forth by the author. And I know Vice is also one of those things that it's not top tier journalism necessarily, but if you're listening to this, go on Facebook, try and join the Cinematic Doctrine Facebook group. Answer the questions so that I or whoever looks at it
read the rules.
Please read the rules and just jump in the conversation. And you can disagree with me, you can agree with me, you can just voice whatever opinion you have. I would just like to see some actual conversations about the contents of the article. There were some good responses. I don't want to make it seem like nobody did, but in general, I always think it's interesting when people have very strong reactions towards something without actually responding back to what was being said. But anyway, we talked about that.
Yeah, with that in mind, we talked about 20 minutes of that too. So 20 minutes of Morbius, 20 minutes of this article, because Morbius is still sort of part of the MCU, so you get to hear us talk about that.
Morbius wants to be in the MCU. The MCU does not seem to want to have Morbius.
Morbius is that one kid in the cartoon lunch table who looks really ugly, and all the protagonist characters look over, and he's got a bubble coming out of his nose, and nope, not sticking around, buddy. You got lice in your hair. You're ugly. That's Morbius, so we don't want him. But yeah, if you support on Patreon for $3 a month, and you get access to a lot of early content like that. I think the last few episodes, it's been a combined 2 hours of discussion content that's in the episodes. They're always right at the start of the episode, posted on Patreon, so you're getting it right away. So even if you listen to this episode now, you can go on Patreon and just listen to the first 40 minutes, and you'll be able to get all that new, juicy, relevant, up-to-date content, which I guess falls apart after 1 month because the internet timeline moves so quick. But we are here otherwise to talk about Top Gun Maverick, and pretty relevant actually when talking about the MCU because before we introduce the movie, I had not seen Top Gun, the first one, until the day before going to see Top Gun Maverick. And the only reason I was interested in seeing Top Gun Maverick is for two reasons. One, we've been seeing this trailer for 3 years, and it just never convinced me. I was never interested in it. But then I went to go see Doctor Strange. And because we wanted to talk about the Avatar trailer, I had to get there early enough to see all the trailers. Sometimes I get up into that theater the second the movie starts, because you always have 20 minutes after your showtime starts to get there. And I want to make sure I'm not having to go to the bathroom because movies are too long now. And instead of just showing the Top Gun Maverick trailer, they just showed a scene. It's the training montage scene in the film. And it was so cool that I was like, all right, I got to see this movie. And it's not just that. I got to see it on the biggest screen possible. I got to see it, as it's being advertised.
And it totally got me, which in its own right is an interesting discussion to have about marketing. I mean, horror movies essentially do this all the time. They just show a scene and then they put up the title and then people go see the movie. I remember Chris La Llorona had that. Of course, it's not really a particularly great movie to be mentioning, but it's a movie that essentially did that. I think a Conjuring film did that too, where they just played just a scene from the movie and then people wanted to go check it out. But they got me with that. And then secondly, I had just been hearing amazing buzz for Maverick the week before the release.
Yeah.
I saw on Letterboxd it was getting more 10s than anything else, which is really tough for a Letterboxd crowd. Of course, I am looking at the Morbius page right now, and it went from being a 2.0 to now having, well, now it's a 2.0 average. It was like a 1.7, but now it's getting a bunch of 10s. I wonder why. I wonder why Morbius is getting a bunch of 10 out of 10s. So those two things totally convinced me. Checked out Top Gun on Netflix. Wow, what a good movie. We definitely need to talk about that just briefly because it helps contextualize Maverick. Went and saw Maverick the next day. Wow, what a good movie Maverick was too. I really can't wait for us to talk about it. But why don't we at least say what Maverick's about? I don't know, or unless you have a little bit of intro you wanted to do.
So
too.
First I want to say, I didn't go to my usual theater. Does your movie theater play things other than movie trailers during the actual trailers part?
Before the trailers start, they play like the Maria Menounos thing.
Yeah,
with,
I'm not counting that. I'm saying like,
and then after during the trailers, once the trailers end, because I only go to AMC. The AMC will they'll play their advertisements real quick for like A-list
the Nicole
theaters.
Kidman
Nicole Kidman
video.
shows up fresh off the set of The Northman, and then they go right into the film. But what did you get?
So my theater, they played a 2 minute. I actually went to the wrong theater. I watched Paws of Fury.
Right.
No, they played.
I just waited for Tom Cruise to show up. I don't know what was going on.
Yeah. Saw Morbius CMAX. And I can't believe this Morbius trailer is so long. They played 2 minutes beer commercial, like a full beer commercial. They played an ad for UFC pay-per-view, and then they played an ad for like a local like laser tag company.
Movie theaters are trying, man.
It was just
something.
I genuinely multiple times I was like, did I get in the wrong theater? What is happening? But anyway,
it's just a screen that shows ads. There's nothing else.
I'm actually watching a TV through like someone's like window at home. Anyway, I just want to know if that was just me. But so I did see Top Gun Maverick in theaters. I saw Top Gun with my grandfather, like just sitting in his living room when I was 8 years old. And I initially planned on rewatching Top Gun because boy, do I not retain anything from it.
I could tell you all about it because boy, it's good. One of the sweatiest movies on the planet. I'll tell you that. Hey there, it's your friendly neighborhood call to action. Just checking in on you. Hope you're doing all right. I'm just stopping by to say, if you enjoy the show, you can always subscribe and write a review for Cinematic Doctrine. There's iTunes, Podchaser, basically anywhere you listen. You can give us a shout out with a thumbs up, 5 stars, gripping positivity. Or if you hate the show, you can say that too.
Wait, what? What are you saying? Why are you saying that?
Well, I'm not going to tell them what to do, Ted. They're free to do what they want. Our analytics say we got a lot of listeners in the US, and they love their freedoms. And you're also free to check out our Twitter. Very active there. We host polls, memes. There's also the Cinematic Doctrine Facebook group called Cinematic Doctrine Facebook Group. If you want to join, just answer the questions, read the rules, and tell them the podcast sent you. Also, you should check out our website. Some really cool stuff there. Editorials, written reviews for movies we haven't had time to cover. Always check out cinematicdoctrine.com when you get the chance. Oh, Ted also told me I shouldn't forget to mention the Patreon. Something about you can support us or something? Wait, Ted, I thought this was like a hobby thing. You want me to
expand Cinematic Doctrine. You know this already.
Right. Yeah, I forgot. I'm the one who put all this together. Yeah, Cinematic Doctrine has a Patreon. For as little as $3 a month, you can gain access to early uncut episodes of the podcast. Oh, and did I mention, you get to tell us what to do. That's right, each month you get to vote on a movie we discuss on the show. Anyways, I gotta run, so I'll see you guys later.
All right, so Top Gun Maverick is the long long-awaited sequel to Top Gun. I believe that this has been in some form of production for over 10 years. Initially, the idea was that everyone from Tony Scott to Val Kilmer to Tom Cruise would come back and it'd pick up in the way a traditional sequel will. But of course, things get delayed and gestated. And I think the issues that Tom Cruise is having personally at various points in his career and life did not help that. However, this film is directed by Joseph Kosinski, who I really don't know anything about him outside of this movie. It has several different credited writers, including Christopher McQuarrie, who you may know is the guy currently in charge of the Mission Impossible franchise, which may explain why some of this movie rips so very hard. But Top Gun Maverick does everything correctly as far as legacy sequels go. It doesn't necessarily try to rehash the original. It actually treats the characters like they have grown up and changed, namely Tom Cruise's Maverick. He has not really moved on much in his career. He is right where he feels like he belongs. However, it's both a mixture of him being very good at what he does, but also an inability to move on. And he is, of course, called in to do one last mission where he has to go back to his old stomping grounds and train up a new group of people. Along the way, there are a couple plot developments that I won't spoil here. However, they actually do a good job of really marrying the established lore from your first Top Gun film and updating it for today. Similar to the way that Creed updated a lot of the Rocky mythos while wiping away some of the stuff that should stay back in the 80s while keeping the heart of what makes those movies work so well. Top Gun Maverick does the same way with Top Gun, where it both embraces the thrill and joys of flying and of being a guy being a dude, as well as friendship and working together, while sort of, acknowledging that these are fallible human people who make mistakes. Particularly the time they really mention the fact that Tom Cruise is kind of grizzled and old in a way that I think is really nice. It is an old-fashioned film where most of the movie there isn't action in the traditional sense, though there are exciting training sequences and flying sequences. There isn't really any violence until near the end of the film. However, it's all building up to that one mission, and they help you understand the stakes. They help you understand what is going on, the rules, why things are important, how things can fail, and they still manage to surprise you a few places anyway. It is great ride. I saw it in a theater filled with old people. I went to a matinee showing multiple times during the movie. People's phones / alarms went off, and of course it was the standard alarm sounds that come on your phone. No one seemed to mind, though. People clapped and cheered and laughed, and it was a great old time. Top Gun Maverick is good old-fashioned filmmaking updated for the 21st century. It gets your blood pumping. I got emotional at a few scenes in ways I didn't expect. Particularly, and this isn't necessarily a spoiler, but they do include Val Kilmer's character Iceman in a very respectful way.
Oh, great. Just great.
Acknowledging the fact that he is, for those who do not know, he had throat cancer and he had surgery that actually damaged his vocal cords. So the few times he's popped up in movies, he's mostly in non-speaking roles, and they actually work that into the film very beautifully. I really liked Top Gun Maverick. You don't need me to tell you that. If you're listening to a Movie Cup podcast, chances are you have heard good things about Top Gun Maverick already. But in case you're wondering what we thought, I thought it was a great time at the movies. See it in IMAX and Dolby if you can. But Melvin, what did you think of, I guess, the original Top Gun as well as Top Gun Maverick?
Yeah, well, I think when I watched Top Gun, I pretty much jumped right into our little chat. And I said, this is a great pulpy film. I said, I've sort of been on a pulpy, or two of my favorite watches this year, most memorable watches this year have been Kimmy with Zoe
Kravitz.
Not Zoe Kravitz. That's right. I was going to say Zazie Beetz. That's not right. So Kimmy and then Top Gun. Both of them are very simple premises, borderline inconsequential, where even if they failed, it wouldn't matter. It's almost that kind of pulpy back pocket kind of paperback story. But it's just got rich characters. Realize this is stuff written by a seasoned writer who has already been theoretically past their prime and is now just writing because that's what they do. It's just like breathing. And so it just feels really good. And Kimmy felt like that for filmmaking, where I could open it up right now just so I can sound like a professional because I have a podcast, but I just want to get the director's name. Steven Soderbergh, who does 2 movies a year sometimes. It's wild how busy this
And they're all
is.
good. He's a great director.
They're all decent to good. And Kimmy was just memorably good. I really enjoyed it. Of course, Contagion, not just because of COVID, but is also a very, very good movie. And that's, of course, been on everyone's mind lately. But Kimmy was great. And then Top Gun, same deal. It's just this premise that's just really
simple. I've jokingly said it's just a high school like football kind of movie where we got to do our training and then it's game night. That's the movie. So there's really no stakes, but because the characters are compelling, because Maverick as a character is arguably very simple, but just as I don't know, he's just a good character. So is Goose and Iceman, and everybody involved is just. You want to stick around and watch what's going on. Plus the setting is beautiful. I've said it has some of the best sky shots I've seen in a movie just ever. It's consistently uses the sky to its benefit. I'm going through Stranger Things season 1 right now, and I've been noticing how rainy it is during their shoot, which likely is not something they wanted, because there's a couple shots where they really do try to have the sky in them. In fact, the first shot of the Byers house, it shows the sky. It looks beautiful. And then like the rest of the show, it's raining. And I'm like, oh man, what a bummer for these guys. And so just using the sky so well for good reason, because it's a flying movie, is great. And then, the beginning of Top Gun and the end are just these excellent bookends of thrilling, exciting flying. As far as I know, I didn't do any reading, but Top Gun, it seems like the first was all actual flying with just the slightest of CG when he does the flying upside down of the other person, which I'm sure they've recreated for real in Maverick. So it was a really good movie. I absolutely enjoyed it. Maybe this is one of the criticisms people have of Top Gun, but I even liked the romance. I thought it's probably one of my favorite movie romances because it's so, you could arguably say toxic because it's so competitive how they treat each other, but it was really interesting. So I was really enjoying that. So I totally got on that train or plane, as you could say, of it being one of the classic greats. And of course, it's funny to make fun of Jerry Bruckheimer movies because they're such dad energy films, but like every one I've seen, I've liked. I've seen a lot. Like I've seen Con Air, which is almost like a parody of them, but it's really fun. Pirates of the Caribbean, of course, is everybody likes except for Mark Kermode. And then there's what else do I have on my shelf? The Rock. That's a Jerry Bruckheimer production.
He did a lot of also, lots of dad movies. Did he do Twister?
Oh, you know what?
He did a lot of movies like that.
But yes, it's that energy. You go to your grandparents' house and they have wood paneling, and then on the shelf where the television's set up, there's all these movies. It is his movies. And I was like, man, Top Gun's good. This guy, he knows what he's doing. Yeah. He knows how to produce a movie.
This is Jerry Bruckheimer. He knows a thing or two.
Have you guys heard
movies.
of him? He's crazy.
I will say, like, to continue the dad energy thing, I know I said there's a lot of old people in my theater, but there were a couple like a teenager with their parents. There were several of those, which I haven't seen in a movie theater in a while. Maybe it's because I either see
because if you see a Marvel movie, it's not teenagers and parents. It's just like adult children. It's like Disney adults.
It's actual children and 20-year-olds, and then or I see like movies that like
or podcasters
no one is seeing, or no one, but like movie Twitter type movies where. I'm guessing there aren't a lot of parents seeing Crimes of the Future in theaters this weekend, but, or unless they're cool. But
that's right.
Yeah, I like I said, I retained very little from the original Top Gun. I more remember the vibe of it, where there's lots of
cool movie.
Great sun.
Cool movie.
I remember the famous Quentin Tarantino scene from Destiny Turns on the Radio, where he's talking about I think it was gay subtext in Top Gun. I don't really remember it, but it's like the only thing people remember from that movie. Destiny Turns on the Radio has not been re-released on DVD or anything in years, but it has a famous random scene where Quentin Tarantino is in it for some reason, where he talks about Top Gun. That's all I remember from it. So I actually wasn't particularly interested in a Top Gun sequel where, gosh darn it, I'm so tired of these big franchises cashing on nostalgia. But that trailer was cool, and people kept talking about it because seeing was great.
And then I texted you and was like, yo. I was like, you gotta see this. So
I had to see, and I first and foremost, it's interesting that this and Michael Bay's Ambulance and a couple others are being
these I've heard good things about Ambulance.
These former pariahs of the movie industry, where Michael Bay's everything wrong with blockbuster filmmaking, and why would you want to see a sequel to some 80s movie no one cares about anymore? But in this day and age, people love these things. They're seen as like these antidotes to the venom that is big superhero franchises, and people are celebrating something like Top Gun and Ambulance as saving cinemas. And I will say to to a certain extent, I can see where that is with Top Gun Maverick, where there is an old-fashioned sensibility. Like the opening credits and titles to this movie are old-fashioned. The fact that they have at the end credits, they have shots of the actors from the movie with their names over it. That's old-fashioned.
Yeah,
the fact there's extended scenes of just Tom Cruise riding around for no reason. That's old-fashioned.
Thank goodness. Yeah.
And the fact that they, as Tom Cruise said in the video before the movie, they flew real planes as real G's. They didn't CGI planes in. They just put stuck cameras in cockpits and filmed them going whoa while they flew around. That stuff is cool. And all of that basic movie making stuff, it still works. And that is sort of ties into kind of the theme of the film itself, where the early on, Tom Cruise does something very risky. He flies a plane he's not supposed to. So Ed Harris, who loves playing grumpy old men. Ed Harris loves playing his characters. He gets grumpy at Tom Cruise, and he's like, eventually we're going to have drones and there's robots, and we don't need pilots like you. You're old fashioned. You're old hats. We're kicking you out. There's no future for you here. And Tom Cruise, both in his real life, where he keeps trying to kill himself making a Mission Impossible movies, and his character in this movie, are insistent that the old ways still work. And that is sort of shown out in the movie itself, where they have these old-fashioned movie-making chops, and the formulas work. And there's a lot of stuff that's quote-unquote formulaic. Like the minute he joins, because they need him to go back to Top Gun and train a bunch of young recruits to do a mission. And the second that is said, you're like, Tom Cruise is going to fly this mission. Tom Cruise is going to be involved in this mission. And you know that the Miles Teller character and him are going to reconcile, and blah, blah, and the Glenn Powell's cocky, arrogant guy is going to learn to be humble, and blah, blah, blah. But it's the way they do it. You're watching these old masters come out of retirement to show these youngsters how to do it, kind of thing. It's like the formulas are old and tired and tried and true, but the way they're being executed is done with precision and steady hand. And it's still effective and it still works.
Can I let you in on a secret, Dan? I didn't think any of that was going to happen.
Did you really not?
I just was like, I really thought like, oh, that'll be interesting. Are they
going to work together? They need to. This mission won't work unless they do.
Well, I genuinely...
just in your seat, like tense and sweating. Like,
so I'll kind of. So I did not think they were going to like let him do anything like that. I thought it was going to be just entirely the team. Even when the movie, I think, is going to end, and I really thought it was going to end there, it like keeps going, and it keeps going extremely well.
You thought those characters were just dead. You're like, wow, what a dour note to end on.
Well, I just didn't expect it to get so... Well, I wouldn't have thought dour, because I thought by that point the film has handled itself so well that it knows what it's doing. Yeah. And so for me, I thought, although dour would have been crazy, like that would have been wild. I think China wanted that. China helped support the film, but then pulled out because the film was too pro-US at some point, but they still got their money's worth. So it doesn't matter.
Tom Cruise wins again,
put it to
baby.
China. Yeah.
Maybe that's why. Like, also, there's an enemy in the movie that they're never named. I don't even think you see the faces of any of the people. They all wear helmets, so they can release this in every market.
It's like the first one, man. The first one's just like a ship is being attacked. Then they just go fight the planes. That's it. You never see their faces. They look like TIE fighters. It's great. It's so funny. But yeah, going from Top Gun though to Maverick, it felt really good. I actually by the middle of the film, I was thinking this is the best legacy movie I've seen. I don't think I've seen a better one.
I mean, Creed is still my favorite of any of these types of.
I haven't checked out Creed, and
have you watched the Rocky movies?
I haven't even seen them.
Oh man,
really want to. And
you're
I'm sure
in for a ride, dude.
Yeah, I don't. I get to go into them blind. I really don't know much of anything about them. So I'm pretty excited about that. But yeah, I was like, this is probably the best legacy movie I've seen, where they carry in themes and develop on stuff into this film where, yeah, there's sort of this idea of like, we're getting rid of the old and the new's coming in. So you can look at that as a cultural thing, as like, there's a lot of generational frustrations going on between older folk and younger folk. I don't need to expand on that. You can just trust me. There's also the film culture aspect of it, of like, he's kind of like an old classic star, and then new stars are coming in and they're much more, I don't know, like for us, you and me, for film fans, people even listening in,
they know of particular actors in movies, but nobody really does that anymore. People go to movies to see IP, hence Morbius, at least initially. And so, although I don't know if that even counts, like if Morbius even counts, nobody knew who he was before, and people still don't really know who he is now. I think they're more confused now that he got re-released. But
And he doesn't say Morbin time, so they're just like, what
they're
is
like, what
this?
the heck? I thought that's what he did. I thought that was his character.
It's this whole thing.
But there was all that. I thought even how the film is like stupidly melancholy. I don't know if you felt that too. Like you said, you got emotional, and I did too. But like the movie's really melancholy, like from the start on, where it's sort of like, yeah, like even just the opening scene of
there's an
flying his
understated melancholy, like the scene where he
yeah.
goes to the bar.
He's at the bar,
you know,
yeah,
just
and
sitting there, and like
he's just alone. He's just looks like this sorry old man. And it never stops really being melancholy. The movie continues to be melancholy, where it's like Tom Cruise isn't racing against his dad now. He's basically racing against himself. Wow, what a deep introspection of growing up. But like he's having to deal with his own riskiness and now having to train people. So it's like it's just good, man.
Yeah, and he's sort of realizing that his time is coming up, and so going
he's
back
old.
to Top Gun,
he's just an old man
in
now.
real life. Tom Cruise is almost 60, so
I think he is 60. It says he was born in 62, so he's
59.
just about okay. Yeah,
he's 59, but
old man.
He and so the only reason he hasn't been kicked out of the Navy is because he's tight with Iceman, who is now like a really important like figure who can like basically bail him out of any sort of situation he's running into. But being called back to Top Gun, it's implied that this kind of is his last mission, and that once this is over, he's going to be kind of forced into retirement or something. And so going back to his old stomping grounds, it's this full circle moment, but for him, it is kind of the end. And so I guess, do you want to get into a little more spoilery at this point to get more into the plot, or?
Oh, it'll make it a lot easier to talk about. So I'll just say, if you haven't seen it, before spoilers, it's just some excellent filmmaking, even on their topic of sort of like talking about franchise fatigue. And of course, this is a franchise. Of course, it's like a 30-some, 40-some-year-old sequel, but really good one. I mean, we haven't even talked about special effects, but because they just use actual flying and they used all this stuff, the movie feels good. Parts where my eyes are just wide because I want to see as much as I can. I said to Catherine, I almost gasped and covered my mouth at scenes, like just being that compelled to react to a movie. I also, before we even go on to spoilers, it is important for me to say that if I was not an artsy fartsy film guy, this would be my number one of the movie of the number one movie of the year. This is my number 3 right now, with RRR being number 2. Check it out; it's on Netflix, and Everything Everywhere being number 1. I was just it's this year has just had 3 10 out of 10 movies. Dan, what is happening? What is it about?
Movies are back, baby.
I know. It's like, it's crazy to me. Okay, I didn't give RR. I give it a 9, but we'll bump that up to number 10. But it's just a great. These are really good movies. Even Scream, that new Scream movie was great. Doctor Strange was good. Batman, I still think 7 out of 10, but I appreciate it. I think that's good. I've seen some crazy movies. Even Our Father being like...
And you are on the lower end of Batman.
Oh, I am. And
too,
so for other people, there's been like 10 great movies this year, except they can't say on Doctor Strange because it wasn't rated R. And the poor kids, little kids cried. Meanwhile, Sonic 2 is their number 1 movie of the year. But like even Our Father...
As it should be. No scene in any movie, Top Gun or otherwise,
Daniel,
made me feel
I misspoke. It's Moonfall. Moonfall's number 1 of the year. But...
even the moon falling to Earth doesn't match Shadow the Hedgehog being revealed. That's
it's so true.
That should have been one Oscar.
The moon is helping us.
Yeah. Forget Flash entering the Speed Force to beat up people in Hawaii. It's Shadow the Hedgehog. That was the Oscar cheer moment.
But yeah, I mean, even Our Father was this visceral, physical experience of a movie too. Even though that's only like 12 out of 31 for me this year. So like, I've just been like, it's just been great. So Top Gun Maverick, though, yeah, number 3 of the years. I texted everybody when I got out of the theater. I was like, Kat, you need to drive because I got a text. And like, it was just like, so yeah, you got to check it out. We're going to talk about spoilers, but I even think, even if you stayed listening, the movie's still good. But yeah, I don't know
Yeah,
where you feel about this movie this year.
it's really good. I like I said, I'm not generally speaking, I'm not a fan of like vehicle extreme sportsy type movies. I don't care about cars. I don't care about boats or planes or any of that stuff. I just something about it just doesn't click for me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not somebody who enjoys watching cars crash into each other or that sort of thing. But that said, Top Gun Maverick really sold me on it. Like, it really did a good job of bringing me into this world where I understood why someone like Tom Cruise would like really get like what he gets out of going very fast in a plane where he hits 10 Gs. Like those early moments where he's flying and you see what it is like for him, where he can push his limits, and seeing what that can do for especially his character who is getting older and time is kind of passing him by a little bit, but he could still, in that moment, he's still the guy he was in 1986 or whatever. Like, so they did a good job bringing me into this beautiful kind of experience. And again, that's kind of what movies are, to take you into places you otherwise wouldn't go, to meet people you would never have met. And Top Gun Maverick does that really well, which then you place that into the overall plot where they invite you, you see these through this great, enjoyable cast of characters, and the threat that's looming over them actually feels tense. There's some real stakes at play, and it's just a really solid time with the movie. So I wouldn't give it like a 10 out of 10, but I also can't really think of anything they do wrong. Like, my only issues would be matters of my own personal taste. So the fact that this has like a 98% critic, 99% audience on Rotten Tomatoes is not that is not a mistake. There is a reason this movie is getting overwhelming praise from everyone. It managed to be.
It is a 4.2 average on Maverick. That's out of 5 on Letterboxd, and it is number 169 out of their top 250. It is.
Yeah, it is a rare film that kind of it works for everyone. Like, movie nerds will appreciate the like practical effects and filmmaking. Your dad will like the fact that there's like, you know, a bunch of soldiers and planes doing America stuff, and then like your family will like the big cheer-worthy stuff at the end. It really does work.
It's also funny. Like, it's got some good humor that's like way better than the quippy dialogue of any Marvel thing. It's like it's good stuff.
Well, yeah, my theater didn't laugh much, but like when they do laugh, they did laugh pretty heartily. But they're all very likable characters and people. So like you really like Bob by the end, you know. It's hard not to like Bob. So, but going into spoilers,
officially.
the big plot element is, and this was a great decision they made. This is a genius decision. The fact that Goose dies in the first movie is an important plot point. In the original Top Gun, he's established to have a son who I don't know if he was even named. There's two things like that.
I don't think
Jennifer Connelly's character is actually mentioned by name in the first Top Gun movie. She doesn't appear on screen, but she's mentioned as, the Admiral's daughter, Penny, whatever. And so Jennifer Connelly is playing that character in this movie. And the other one is his son grows up to be Miles Teller, who, for the record, I've never particularly liked Miles Teller as an actor.
Really?
I think he's okay. He's good he's totally fine in otherwise great movies. So like, he's good in Whiplash, but J.K. Simmons runs the show in that. He's good in other things. However, did
you like him in Too Old to Die Young, or did you, like everyone else, not watch that?
I had never seen that, so no.
Okay.
But
nobody watched that.
I didn't see that boxing movies in either, even though I was interested, but he's pretty good in this. And so he's bitter towards Tom Cruise's character because Tom Cruise has actively gotten in the way of his Navy career. He pulled his papers from going to the academy and so on and so forth. So there's this bitter rivalry. And so Tom Cruise sees his own previous mistakes in this character. Meanwhile, his main rival is played by Glenn Powell, who's a really good actor who isn't in a ton of stuff, but he's a guy in a lot of movies you've seen him like he's in Hidden Figures. He's in Hidden Figures. He's good. He was in Expendables 3 for some reason, but he's a very charismatic actor. And here he gets to just be the smarmy, cocky guy who everyone doesn't like. And there's a couple other people who are all pretty good in this. And for me, I love John Hamm, who I just wish he was a bigger leading man in things. He is so good in everything he's in.
He really is.
He should be in more stuff. I don't know why Mad Men didn't make him the biggest movie star in the world, but people want him to play Batman. I think he'd be a great Batman. But
I remember fan casting for that. Yeah.
But he's sort of the no nonsense, true neutral general who's working above Tom Cruise. He's telling him to play by the book, and Tom Cruise, because he's Tom Cruise, likes to bend the rules a little bit. And But the main tension is he has his Tom Cruise's tension with Miles Teller, and he sort of is a pseudo father figure to him, but Miles Teller hates him, so he's trying to teach all these young people what to do. But he realizes that they're like, he kind of can't in some ways, because he just is the perfect pilot. He doesn't really know how to teach that, and he doesn't really like. But as he's seeing his own career come to an end, he doesn't really know who he is outside of that. He also has this romance with Jennifer Connelly's character, where he is sort of seeing like what maybe a life outside of this could be like, but he doesn't really know how to move on from that. And there's some really good solid drama, and all this plays over these really fun, interesting training montages where they're running drills and they're trying to fly planes and they play football together, and like all these ingredients work together so well, where you really by the end you were just can't help but gosh darn it, you want to see them run this mission, and gosh darn it, you want to see them succeed.
Yeah.
It's
also like you don't want to see them run the mission because of the mission.
Because the mission is probably going to kill them. So they have to...
Unlike the first one where there's no stakes, this one immediately is like, this is a suicide mission. And it's like the most terrifying
John
thing
Hamm
in the
is
world.
like, Tom Cruise is like, unless they do it this way, they're going to die. He's like, well, you can't do it that way. He's like, well, then they're going to die. And John Hamm is like, they do the risks. So Tom Cruise, and it's a great little humanizing thing where Tom Cruise is, the reason he's being the way he is he doesn't want to see these people die, because
part of their job
sucks,
is going
but,
home.
Because he wants them to go home.
Yes.
And but the way they need to do it in order to not die is so scientifically impossible. But Tom Cruise could do it, baby. He does.
Yeah.
So there's a scene where he gets removed from the mission, but then he flies the mission perfectly in the simulation.
And not just perfectly, it's the goal was 3 minutes. John Hamm comes in and says, we're doing it in 4 minutes and 30 seconds. And everyone's like, we can't do that. They're going to get us. And then he just shows up. Set my timer to 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And you're like, is he going to do it? Is he going to do it?
Yeah,
and like, obviously I know he's going to do it, but
people crack beers in the theater and start clapping together.
Oh man.
It all works together. It all meshes together so perfectly. And it's when we talk about good popcorn movies, I think there is this sense that like a good popcorn movie is just things blow up. But the reason that people ragged on the Transformers movies for so long is that you just didn't care about anything that happened in those movies. Here, it's a good popcorn movie because it's exciting. It's exciting in a way where you feel invested in what's happening to these characters. You want them to succeed.
Incredibly invested.
You don't want to see them get hurt or die. There's one scene early on during a training mission where a guy falls asleep, and people in my theater gasped.
Oh my gosh!
Oh no! And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, it's a training mission. There's no way this guy's actually going to die. But everyone was so caught up. Everyone's so caught up. They're just like, oh!
It's a training mission where Goose died. So I'm like, I don't know.
True.
President says that it could happen. It could totally happen.
Speaking of, I do want to touch upon. I did not believe that Val Kilmer was going to appear in this movie. Like, I did not think it was going to happen. When you see his picture and then you get texts between him and Tom Cruise,
they listed him in the casting in the beginning, so I was positive. I was like, okay, I guess he's in it somehow.
Until that happened, I was just like, "There's like, oh, are they actually going to put him in the movie?" And then you see his picture, which is like, okay, like that's clearly kind of a new picture. So maybe that's why. But no. Because they reached that point in the movie where Tom Cruise is like, I can't do this. I don't think this is successful. This Miles Teller kid hates me. And then he gets a text from Val Kilmer, who is just Iceman in his phone, which is great.
Yeah.
It's like, I need to see you. And so he goes, and he sees Val Kilmer's wife, who tells him, like, the first he says, like, it's back. He can barely talk. And I was like, oh, that's how they're going to do it. And so he goes in, and it's Val Kilmer. And he's back as Iceman, and they hug. And immediately the tone and everything about the scene is so like, it just feels different for the rest of the movie, because there's an extra layer of like, they really are trying to like show respect and honor to this actor and character. And there seems to be genuine camaraderie and fondness between the two of them. And they're hugging. And at first Val Kilmer is just typing on a screen so Tom Cruise can read it. And Val Kilmer is telling him that it's time to move on and let go and all this stuff. And then finally at the end, he belaboredly talks. And I asked him who the best pilot is. And Tom Cruise is like, oh, let's not do this right now. And they chuckle and they hug. And people in my theater were getting teary eyed. And I was getting a little emotional. I was like, this is a very beautiful scene. And it's like, it's the good of the stuff we complain about. Like, this only kind of fully works with both nostalgia and respecting a long, like, past its prime franchise, but also like acknowledging kind of the real world elements going on. It's all the stuff that some people get tired of, but when done really well, there's a reason people constantly trying to hit that nostalgia button. There's a reason we get Ghostbusters, Afterlife, and that stuff. But here it works so well because it's done with such tenderness and genuine fondness for the franchise, but it's also warranted and it works for the movie. But
it works for the movie, but also like it's I mean the perfect antithesis to this is Harrison Ford is still doing pirating in Star Wars Episode 7. And the guy's like 70 years old and can barely walk and also injured himself on set. And yet they're still saying, you got to run away from stormtroopers. And it's just, it's not as fun to watch him be who he was when he was younger so that he can go home after work and complain to his wife about how he doesn't have the same energy, but I got to make money to pay for our surgeries. This is more like, the tone of that scene, like you said, changing is so impactful because it's just two older men really reflecting on their age, really reflecting on the unique struggles of being 60 years old, except in their hyperbolized premise where like
in Val Kilmer's character is said to basically have cancer of some kind.
Yeah. So. And like that adds so much more heft and romance to it. It adds so much more like it's not just like I don't know, cool lasers and explosions. It's just like relatable. It's reflective. It's emotional. It's what we want from fiction, where we get to step into something that's not like us. So for you and me being 20 something, 30 somethings, we haven't experienced this part of our life yet, but because of its portrayal, despite the fact that Maverick is so basically a superhero, like, and
well, he's still Tom Cruise, you know. So,
yeah. Well, okay, so Tom Cruise is just a real life superhero. Then, but Catherine always says it's the Scientology, it's the superpowers he gets from being a Scientology.
Well, he's got those those thetans out of his body, so he can he can do all this stuff.
The aliens are helping him, but they're helping him at the box office.
We got pretty far without making a Scientology joke, so I think we finally earned it. But
yeah, but that's what makes it work for me. And because the whole film is like that. The whole film, like the melancholy of the bar scene is like, Tom Cruise is too old to be partying with these kids. It would look weird. Like, but also it's Goose's son partying, doing something that Goose would do.
Yeah, singing Great Balls of Fire.
And it's just, so they do a flashback to a scene that's otherwise fun, which when I watch Top Gun and that scene goes on, I'm like, oh man, Goose is dead. I'm so sorry, Goose, you're going to die in the next 10 minutes. And then he does. But like, which at some point you start building up characters, such a good friend. I'm like, oh, he's out. Oh, I'm so sorry. But they do that to like where in the first film it's really fun, and then this film it's just like a heartbreaking scene where even Jennifer Connelly looks out and just sees like Maverick's head's like down, and Tom Cruise is acting his heart out because he's probably thinking, oh no, I am old. Oh, I can't do this anymore. And so it's just good stuff, man. It's good filmmaking. Well, it's good fiction.
You compare it to the whole Harrison Ford and the Star Wars that just came back, but yeah, in this movie they do a much better job of the franchise kind of grew up with the characters and therefore it grows up with the audience, which even to an extent the Harry Potter films did that, where I should say the books and then the movies followed suit, where the problems and the problems the kids face as they get older mirrors the problems that the children growing up reading the Harry Potter books feel. And to an extent, like, and again, to reference Creed does this masterfully with Rocky Balboa's character, but here, yeah, like the 20, 30 somethings that saw the first Top Gun are now old men, and they get to watch as as Maverick and Iceman reminisce about being old men. And so the fact they lean into this aspect, they don't try to hide it. They don't dye the character's hair. They don't just,
thank goodness,
they don't just bring in tons of stunt doubles to do all the same action scenes. This isn't, old Mark Hamill doing Jedi things. They use that to their advantage, and you see like the frailty of the characters, which helps make the later action with these younger characters feel more like impactful, because there's a sense of like, oh, these are human beings that could die or have died.
Right.
And later, Iceman's character does pass away, and it's what gives Maverick, Tom Cruise the drive to continue and complete this mission he started. But yeah, it gives the thing weight, and it's like, it helps, like, this doesn't feel like a cheap cash in. It feels like everyone involved wanted to tell a story, but like there's a story here where the characters have all grown up and progressed, and like this isn't they're not playing a nostalgia tour. This isn't like a band getting back together to play the hits on a nostalgia tour. This is a full new story with the characters have grown up, and there's a bunch of new characters. I don't know. It's just they do everything right, and that's the thing I keep coming back to. Is as I'm thinking about the movie, and I was thinking about it all day yesterday. I was just like, yeah, they did. This is the best version of that this could have been. Like a lot of people are saying this is better than the first Top Gun film.
I would agree with that. I think the first Top Gun is really good. It's 8 out of 10 for me. I thought it was just brilliantly made, beautiful movie. In that situation, yes, everything is being done right. But then this, it's just, I don't know. It's like if I drank the wine that was 10 years old was Top Gun, but now I'm drinking wine that's 40 years old. It's just better. It's more refined, pure. It's just good. So I can completely agree with that sentiment that it's better.
And the actual mission is pretty tense. Like once they get there.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Of course, when he has to pick a wingman, he picks Miles Teller, because of course he has to, because it's still a movie. And if things go wrong, there are a couple things that they didn't expect to happen do happen, and it's exciting and tense. And then Tom Cruise's plane just gets shot down, and then it just cuts to black. And for a second, people in my theater were just stunned. And then it cuts to a different perspective, and then it turns out he survived.
Great choice.
And because Miles Teller actually goes back to save him, and it's a wonderful scene because initially Tom Cruise got shot down because he was saving Miles Teller's character. And this is how men solve their problems, is by getting into horrible, dangerous situations together and therefore earn each other's respect. And then they have to go behind enemy lines. And of course, an old plane is sitting in a hangar.
Yeah.
And of course, that's what they get. And it's like, all right, the movie's earned this moment. Tom Cruise teaches him how to use this old plane where nothing works on it. They have to use strategy to get out of the situation, because they have to they're all these younger, more well-equipped high-tech planes are fighting them, and they have to figure out how to strategically beat these planes. And they turn a single dogfight between two planes into this extremely satisfying and exciting, intense action scene. Again, I know, and this is something I will talk about when we get to the end, but I know we keep comparing it to comic book movies, but yeah, there's not armies and armies of faceless alien goons getting shot, but it's just two people fighting in a plane, and it's so much more exciting and interesting.
Yes.
Than just a million
100%.
faceless goons getting shot by one laser person or whatever. And again, it's realistic to an extent. It's very unrealistic, but it's a realistic extent where they hit a point where they cannot win. They are going to lose, and it's only because the initial cocky guy, Glenn Powell, who everyone hates, comes up and saves the day, and he looks at them, and they have a knowing look between each other where they all learn each other's respect. And again, it's another cheer-worthy moment where everyone's pumped. But that scene works because there's rules, there's clear stakes, there's limitations put on the characters that they have to overcome, and then when they can overcome them no more, then you can throw in a little bit of movie magic to save them. And it's then they get back, and Tom Cruise and Miles Teller have a moment where they thank each other for saving him, and he thanks him, and Miles Teller tells him it's what Goose would have done, and everyone in the theater starts crying again, and they hug because they're just having a bro out moment, and it's just so good. It's just so satisfying, and that's the whole plot of the movie right there. But
it's great.
The actual the events and plot isn't much, but again, the execution is so perfect that it really elevates what is a pretty standard screenplay in some ways to something really special, because it's just I want to say they don't make them like they used to, but this movie exists, so they still do make them like they used to.
Yes, they do.
But I've been rambling, but before we get into some other things I want to talk about, do you have any other thoughts on?
Not particularly. I mean, I did find it interesting. I was talking to Kat a lot about how because we all watch movies differently and we kind of step away with different things. For me, I was thinking of it more culturally, just that the movie has a hopeful perspective of generational working together stuff, where there's frustrations between Maverick being the old head and the younger team, and there's a mutual partnership, because that's how you're going to get the mission done. But there's also the unique personal frustrations of Miles Teller's character Rooster and Maverick, and how they frustratingly get through those things to then succeed in the end, I just found compelling. And since I saw this, I never even got around to writing my Letterboxd review. So there's actually a lot of thoughts that I still haven't really taken from the abstract down into specific wording, but I just found all that nice. I think after Marvel movies after so many, not just, I think when we say Marvel movie, we also mean any movie that another studio tries to do that's like a Marvel movie. So I'll call it a
R.I.P. Dark Universe.
Yeah. It just had its anniversary, like I think 2 weeks ago.
I celebrated. Don't worry.
But spectacle movies, right? Like I wouldn't call them blockbusters, but spectacle movies or Marvel movies where things feel fake and saccharine and they almost feel incomplete and they're committee and they don't have any sense of realism, even though we talked about this in our Patreon exclusive section, but they can feel like they mention serious problems with the world and then they solve it with like an infinity stone. Oh, great. I wish I could find that. I insert weirdo right winger thinking this is alchemist trying to make this philosopher's stone. But I just found myself talking a bit like that with Catherine about the film, but then I was also like, but also the movie's great because it's not really about anything like that. It's just another pulpy movie about a nameless villain where they got uranium. We don't like that. They don't even say what ally it's near. They're just like, there's somebody we don't like is building a uranium reserve near an ally. Okay.
He might as well have said the baddies got it, or whatever.
And it's right next to the goodies that we like. And so it's just solid stuff because that doesn't really matter. Because when you go to the movies, you want to have a fun time, even if you're going there to be scared or challenged. Like I've even heard criticism for Alex Collins' newest movie, Men, being too like stereotypical A24, where it's just sort of another male-directed, male-written movie about women's problems that is basically like nudging them going, I understand, but it's more like a McLovin's character in Promising Young Woman, where it's like, I understand. Also, it'd be really nice if you slept with me, that kind of aesthetic. This isn't anything like that, where it's just fun stuff constantly. We're going to get emotional because it's fun to cry. We're going to get excited because it's fun to watch planes fly around. We're going to have this pilot get knocked out by the G-force because it feels great to be really afraid for this guy's life only for him to survive. All of that stuff is just a ton of fun. And even my biggest criticism for Texas Chainsaw is like, man, the movie just wasn't fun. And that's my least favorite of the year still. And I think just in the last few years, you've had the Marvel movies kind of try to pioneer what the current age of fun is. And Doctor Strange is one of the most fun Marvel movies we've had in years, and a ton of people were afraid of that movie. So I don't know, man. I'm glad to watch a movie that I guess isn't offensive to babies who can't watch a guy's brain melt, and then also it's a really, really well made, wonderfully shot, excellent film with just some awesome effects. I mean, I can't wait to see like a behind the scenes where they're talking about like, yeah, we almost died. Let's tell you about that. Or something like that. Like,
yeah, driving home from the theater, I was worried about this episode because I was like, how many different ways can I go? This movie's sick. Like, that's all I really have to say about it.
You were passing it over to me. I'm like, do I repeat what I've just said? I hope I said
like,
something
there's
different.
only so many different ways I can go. Yeah, this movie totally rips, dude. It's just like, there's nothing particularly wrong with it. Like you can try and be like, oh, it's kind of American military propaganda, isn't it?
Barely.
There's that scene with Tom Cruise in front of an American flag. I mean, like it's
like saying a movie with only men in it is pro men.
Like, well, okay, it's pro. Fast airplanes are sick.
Yeah.
That's like
it's pro
like,
cool.
Literally, like the enemy is completely irrelevant. Like they even gave them the most vaguest thing. They just have plutonium. Like this felt like a script from the 80s in that regard, where we're just
it's
like
unobtainium
vague.
From Avatar 1.
Yeah, yeah. It's just it's not about that. It's about the journey of these characters. Like I guess any movie that doesn't portray the military as monstrously evil is quote unquote propaganda. But I mean, okay, fine, whatever. But
this movie just makes you want to join the military because you get to fly planes and live in Florida. Like, that's awesome. Cool. I'll do it. Or California. I don't know. Wherever they're at. But it's beautiful there. That's all I got to say. And so sign me up, baby. Get me in the military.
Free college. Free college.
That's right.
I will say though, like, I makes me wonder, like, would this movie has been so not just warmly received, like celebrated, if it had released at any other like time in Hollywood history, right? Like, if this had come out in 2006, would people be like pumping their fists, like, yeah, Top Gun Maverick, movie of the year?
Well, I'll preface it by saying talking theoreticals is silly for me. So whatever I say at this point, I equally think is silly. So I'm just going to say that. Secondly,
like I'm just to say that the following message does not.
I don't know how to answer something that's not real. But like, cue the atheist listening to our podcast who are going, well, you like God, so what are you talking about? Like, okay, but like. But
why would you listen to an hour and a half of us talking about Top Gun Maverick if you're just like, I don't know.
But okay. But because part of why the movie works too is the time it's coming out. I've talked about this plenty of times whenever I mention Captain America, Winter Soldier, like literally 2 weeks after drone strikes are being talked about constantly on the news. And then we're talking about the premise of that film is, what if we preemptively killed people that algorithmically we think are bad? Like, yeah, that's like a really interesting thing to think about. And of course, it's in the Marvel system, but that movie actually is really quite fascinating because it's also a really well-made, borderline 007 Captain America movie. But it released at just the right time. And like, I think Maverick is kind of similar where, yeah, you and I are movie podcast people. We've been going to the movies for the last year. But Maverick comes just when people are feeling, I mean, COVID cases have been rising again, but now there's even podcasts I've listened to where people really had not been going out to the movies until now, and we're planning specifically to break that fast with Maverick. So I would almost say like Maverick is kind of like that last bastion of it's also the first time people are back in theaters and seeing something really cool, but also like it is a movie theater movie. It's kind of like we mentioned Doctor Strange a lot since seeing it because it's a good movie, but Everything Everywhere All at Once is more of a see it in the movie theater kind of movie because of its filmmaking than Doctor Strange was. So even Maverick being this wonderful film to watch on the screen where you have these jet engines that just sound awesome. We didn't even mention this, but have you gone to an air show ever?
No, like I said, that's not really my thing.
I've been to a couple air shows as a kid, and they're really, really cool. I mean, just the power of it. I mean, I've been to a couple of NASCAR races too, and they're just worth to go to at least once. Just to like the power of these engines is unbelievable. Please, for the love of God, please take earplugs because it's painfully loud, but that's part of the experience. And so the film itself capturing that indoor Dolby or IMAX experience, me being pro Dolby, but it's just got all of what you kind of want right now. So I think to answer your question, if it released later or earlier, maybe. I mean, 2006 was probably a more forgiving time to see a movie anyway than it is now. I mean, goodness gracious. Because we're all celebrating Top Gun Maverick not being a Marvel movie, but it is still a sequel. So it's still a known IP and stuff like that. But I don't know. I couldn't, like I said, I think the question is a little silly because it works in a realm that I don't know if it's even possible to talk about. Plus, I was 11 years old at the time, so how could I tell if it was released at 2006? I mean, man, what came out in 2006? Was that even a good year for movies? I know 2009 is what a lot of people consider the worst year for movies, but I don't know. I think it's released at a good time, though. It's basically the first summer movie this year. It did have some, I don't know, earlier this year, like I said, the only other good movies I've seen are bordering on art or foreign film. So this is like the first great movie. I mean, people saw Batman and liked it, but that's not really that's an intellectually interesting movie, but that wasn't like fun. And No Way Home was last year, but that was still just, it very closely bordered on Things We Know, but it turned out really great. I don't know. What do you think about it? Do you think this would have done well a couple years ago? Or like, do you think this is like just right?
Yeah, I think it'd have done well if it had, like, I know, like, to talk about theoreticals, if it had this level of technical proficiency. I think it would have done well.
If it, I don't know how they would have done this in 2006 because DSLRs were not that popular then.
During like the 3D craze, like when Avatar came out, I could see this being a big 3D
This could have been cool in 3D.
Movie.
I would have seen this in 3D.
Yeah, I think that extra element of it's almost like a conquering hero come to save and release us from the shackles of a pandemic / Morbius filled time, like Top Gun Maverick.
And bookending, because Mission Impossible Fallout was right before the pandemic. That was 2019, and people loved that movie. People were saying that was one of the best action movies ever. So, like, Tom Cruise, man.
See Henry Cavill load his arms like they're guns. Like, it's sick.
He looks great in that movie. It's wild. Oh, man.
Yeah, it's also interesting watching the complete career rehabilitation of Tom Cruise, because I remember when he was like person non grata, like because of the whole Scientology jumping on Oprah's couch thing, like
but that was like the 90s, right? That was
that was early 2000s. His movie Valkyrie, which came out in like 2007.
I do remember. I saw Valkyrie. I forgot that I saw it until you just said it. Actually,
I remember the advertising like minimized the fact Tom Cruise was like the star of the movie because he was considered such like box office poison. The only other movie he was like quote unquote in was Tropic Thunder for like a year, So it's like he was like his career was like dead.
That's right. And he had those Jack Reacher movies that first one. I think I watched it because my parents were watching it. Had the worst car chase I've seen in a movie ever.
Yeah, but the rest of the movie was awesome.
Good.
I really like that Jack Reacher movie.
I guess I got to rewatch it.
It's a pretty fun action movie if you go in with like the correct expectations, which is you're going to see Tom Cruise kill a bunch of people, and Robert Duvall's in the movie for some reason as a sniper of all things. It's a lot like Nobody in a lot of ways, but. I know Jack Reacher is still like it's the franchise has yet to really become a big franchise despite existing forever and ever. But
now it's on Amazon.
Yeah, right. It's like another Jack Reacher thing out there. But
yeah,
but like seeing him like go from that social pariah, like weirdo guy, he's whatever, to like the savior of the modern blockbuster has been absolutely fascinating to me.
Yeah,
everyone's like, this guy's weird. He's like creepy. He's got too many teeth in his mouth. Blah blah blah. It's true. He has an extra tooth like in the middle of his mouth.
Oh my gosh!
Did you know that?
I'm looking at this. Is that really what? That's so terrible. But his teeth look great.
No, it's like I don't know why people always talk about like the negative. It's like the dude's got like $1 million smile. Leave him alone. There's a lot of things to criticize Tom Cruise for, and that is not one of them. But it's been interesting as an outside observer. Where
I don't like Val Kilmer's. His voice is all weird. What's up with that? That's just a terrible criticism
that people mention all the time. And
I've never heard that.
I've heard this a lot. Christian Bale based Patrick Bateman on Tom Cruise. Have you heard this?
What?
Yeah. So there's this interview where, according to Christian Bale, he said he had, quote, this intense friendliness despite having, like, quote, nothing behind his eyes. And he based his entire portrayal of Patrick Bateman on this one Tom Cruise interview we saw. So, yeah, Tom Cruise is an interesting guy, but he watches at least one movie a day. He really, really loves films. There's videos of him like going to see like Tenet in theaters with like a big face mask on. But
I do, yeah, I remember seeing that.
There's apparently like he would dress up in disguises or something to go to the movies every day or something, which is a hilarious visual. Like him in like in a full body like astronaut suit or dressed in like cosplay to go see.
Is he like Keanu Reeves? What's that one interview? Or it's a clip, and it's just Keanu Reeves going, "I love movies. Gosh, I love movies.
Yeah.
I love watching them, and I love making them." And it's like, that's it. That's the clip. That's just Tom Cruise is the alternative not alternative, just the partner, the twin.
Yeah.
I love movies.
Keanu Reeves is the everyman version of that. Tom Cruise is like the weirdo artist version of that. You know, they're two sides of the same coin, but they're united in this passion of love of films. So, but yeah, I can't say I dislike Mr. Cruise. He's made a lot of great flicks. The fact that he is one of those people who has the pull to get these big, expensive blockbuster movies made, but made the quote unquote correct way. Like, there's a part that's always going to respect that. You know, I can't wait for the day where he and Christopher Nolan make a movie together and it's just completely incomprehensible and costs $500 million and Tom Cruise dies during it for some reason, you know. But like, that's the thing. People are expecting
the remake
Tom Cruise
of The Crow,
to die.
dude. They're going to remake The Crow.
Apparently, what's his name? Something Skarsgård is going to be the new Crow.
Alexander from Northman.
Assuming it's not going to be the guy like the Skarsgård that's in the Thor movies. But yeah, that's all I got to say about this wonderful little Top Gun Maverick movie. You see it in theaters. If you've listened this far, you've probably already seen it. But tell your friends to see it.
See it again. I
See
want
it
to see it again. I just don't got time.
I remember that was a quote for every trailer, like on TV. You see it after a movie.
See it again.
See it again and again. You'll stand up and cheer.
Little did they know that 10 years later, Spider-Man and Spider-Man would show up with Spider-Man, and everyone would be vomiting.
The
and
worst
eating
tweet
each
I've ever
other's
seen in
vomit.
my entire life was tweeted a few days ago, and it's I don't want to people bag on this guy, but he's a guy who tweets about video games and comic book movies. It's his job to talk about these things. So people are being a little mean to him, but he tweeted like there should be an option where there should be an option
You're
where
building it up.
sorry, you should be able to. It's so funny. Sorry, it's
okay. What is
the
happening?
home video / streaming release should have an option where you could turn on crowd noise when you watch it, so you can get the experience of everyone cheering when you watch it at home.
Oh, that's terrible.
Like,
Give me that with Evil Dead 2013. That'd be pretty dope.
Yeah, but that's like the
Everyone's
depressing
freaking out.
image of me alone in a room with my Deadpool shirt, turning on the sound of crowd cheering for the portal scene, so I could cheer along at home with my imaginary friends. It's just so sad.
Just go on YouTube and look up what is it? The final fight of Breaking Dawn Part 2.
Oh,
Opening
man.
night.
That
That's the
scene is
only
so
one you
great.
need. It's the only one you need where it literally starts with everyone panicking and getting mad at the movie and then cheering the movie on. Like, yeah.
When my wife saw that movie in theaters, she saw it on IMAX. She said people were actually crying because like major characters were dying. They're like, no. They're like crying.
What an experience.
And then they were just
man.
confused. So for those of you who do not know, if you have not read Breaking Dawn, the book, I actually haven't. I read the first 3 and I didn't ever read Breaking Dawn.
I got to the point that Bella, spoilers, becomes a vampire. What a surprise. And then I stopped reading because I was like, all right, I did it. That's all I've been waiting for. So I don't even know what happens at the end.
For the record,
I don't know anything.
For those who just assume I just went to the Barnes & Noble and picked up Twilight, it was actually one of my summer reading assignments, for the record. And then I read New Moon of my own volition, which is one of the worst books I've ever read.
It's a bad sequel, dude.
And then I read Eclipse because at that point I was like, I just want to know what happens next. And then she made a 4th book, which I read. But anyway, the 4th book has one of the worst like ending things where all of the characters get together. It's like the airport fight in Civil War or whatever, except they just have a discussion and they all walk away. So talk about anticlimactic. So realizing this would be bad for a movie when they made Breaking Dawn Part 2 at the scene where all of the vampires worlds come together, without warning, they just start fighting and killing each other. A character gets their head cut off and then eaten by a werewolf. People get ripped in half. It's shockingly violent and graphic
because they just turn into like a ceramic when they get killed and stuff. But it's still shocking because you're like, oh my gosh,
this is Twilight. Like there's no action in these movies. It's not violent or anything. And then just suddenly this insanely horrific scene cuts. And then it's revealed it's such a vision a character's having. So they do both. Like they have this horrible action scene where all the characters you love are dead. And then there's like, oh, it's a dream. And then they all walk away. So they managed to do both things. So for some people like myself, they think that's the best thing that they could have possibly done. There actually is a great this isn't my recommendation, but there's a podcast called The Twilight Effect where one of the actors from the movie and her friend who is a Twilight super fan just go rewatch the Twilight movies. They bring on guests to talk about the movies. And like I learned things like Kellen Lutz is one of the actors in it, is like a really like hardcore Christian. So if you have a prayer request, you could just email or DM Kellen Lutz and he and his wife will pray for you.
Oh, cute.
So I guess you could, if you DM me, I'll pray for you too. But why do that? You could get Kellen Lutz to do it. So who's also in Expendables 3. Weird how all these things come together.
String theory, dude. It's the power of Scientology. Yeah. Thanks, Tom Cruise. Maverick's good. Maverick's a really good movie. Definitely go check it out. See it again and again and give it 2 thumbs up. It is just an absolute blast. The movie looks really good. It feels really good. It sounds really good. And man, we didn't even talk about the soundtrack from Top Gun, the first one, but
Lady Gaga, Hans Zimmer, what a team.
Yeah, they didn't get the dream team of Hans Zimmer and Pharrell Williams again, though. They are the dream team.
They should have got Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross to give like a really moody, down tempo, Social Network type score for this. What's it? One Republic recorded a song for this movie.
Did Lady Gaga help with the soundtrack or just do the final song at the end?
She's credited as like one of the people who made
I did
the
see
soundtrack.
the composer, but yeah.
But-
Anyways, so, but I guess that's it. This is gonna be a short episode. All right? It's a good movie, guys.
It's an hour-long
great.
episode. What are you talking about?
That's a shorter episode. Most of ours
Is
are like
it?
an hour and a half.
That's crazy.
Yeah, man. But
I
I
can
don't know
keep talking if you want. I mean,
I'm okay with this. Easy to edit, easy to clean up. Sticker. If you want extra content, y'all know how to do it. $3 a month. You can get it.
well,
on
we
the
also still have to do
Patreon.
recommendations and stuff. So
That's true. So what do you have for your Christian recommendation?
I don't have any
Your
recommendations.
commentary one.
No, no, I can think of
Watch
something.
Top Gun.
my recommendation is the novelization of Top Gun.
How do we not talk about the
Zahn.
poster? By the way, the poster for Top Gun is the first one is beautiful, just an awesome poster, and then the one for Maverick is just kind of normal. It's such a bummer. What a wasted opportunity.
The movie poster industry is just in the gutter. I don't want to speak out of turn here, but it is quite disappointing.
There's a couple good ones. What was that one? The Diana one with Kristen Stewart, where it's just her crying in the dress. That one was a good one. I thought that poster was good. Spencer, yes. That poster was dope. I love that one. Let me pop open a list of 2022 movies. There might be a good poster or two. Let's take a look.
I do have recommendations.
Everything Everywhere is a good one. Everything Everywhere is a good one. The let's see here.
It doesn't have to be an hour and a half episode, Melvin. It's okay if it's just an hour.
I'm not seeing any other. Windfall. Windfall's a good one. I like that one. Senior Year's kind of a good poster. I like that one.
Ant-Man has a great poster.
Nope is a really good one. I really like that poster. I really like that trailer too. But Bullet Train is still, I think, the best trailer right now. Let's keep looking. Let's go for a little longer. JK, haha. What's your recommendation, my man? What do you got?
So, this summer for the college group I'm doing at my church, I'm doing a series on Ruth. We are basing it on the book A Loving Life by Paul Miller. However, to supplement the book, because I mean, you can consider this like a bonus recommendation, but A Praying Life is specifically created to be a taught curriculum, and it includes like lesson guides and questions and stuff. It's really formatted really easily, and you can sort of customize it to accommodate whatever size group you're doing. But the commentary I'm using to supplement his material is the Esther and Ruth commentary from the Reformed Expository Commentary series. It's written by Ian Duguid. Anyway, I love the Reformed Expository Commentary series. I previously believe I recommended one for another book because I've used a couple of them, but I've recommended other volumes in the series before. And Ruth is an interesting book to talk about and teach. It often gets simplified down to just a women's conference type thing where you go to a conference, they tell the single ladies that Boaz is coming and they need to keep praying. And that's kind of how they teach Ruth. Ruth is much more depthful. There's so much more beauty in that book. And while it is a beautiful story of how God redeems a woman through someone like Boaz, there's a lot more going on to it than that. And I think the much more expository based commentary brings a lot of that material to the forefront. You see the providence of God. You see how God acts in the lives of quote unquote unimportant people. And it is a beautiful like short story in the middle of the Bible. And I love Ruth, and I love this commentary on it. See Esther and Ruth from the Reformed Expository Commentary series.
Yeah, I'm going to recommend. I've been on kind of like an Evil Dead kick lately. I went through and watched all the movies again. How would I rank them? They're all 8 out of 10s and up. I think I have Evil Dead, the first one, The Evil Dead, as my number one. I know that's a hot take for some people because they swear by 2. But I just think the first one's a really expertly made film. I wish it was possible to find a Blu-ray cut of the original cut because they have some cleaned up edits out there. But they George Lucas that movie. But I am not recommending though the Evil Dead movies. I am recommending the new Evil Dead game that just came out. It is a 4v1 asymmetric horror game. It is pretty cool. Because instead of doing the normal asymmetric system of 1 killer and 4 people playing hide and seek, trying not to get killed, in Evil Dead fashion, you can fight back. And it is a lot of fun. It's a little janky and silly, as are most, IP gimmicky style games are. You could even see that this game was probably like a tech demo or another game first, and then they got the rights for it, kind of like how the Friday the 13th game was. Rest in peace, that game, because man, that could have gotten better and better if they kept working on it. But it plays really well. It's very fun. It's goofy. It's got a couple solo things, but the most enjoyable stuff is when you and your friends play either against a computer, which plays fine for learning how the game goes, or playing online against a player who is just the Kandarian demon. They can pick, there's characters throughout the original trilogy and Ash vs. Evil Dead, which I also started watching too. I did not know that pilot episode was directed and written by Sam Raimi. So this was basically just another Evil Dead movie. So it's really fun. Just a blast. But the game plays really well, and again, has characters throughout. You can play as either, I think it's the grandmother is the primary demon for one of them. From the second one, I think the line is, I didn't look up to confirm, but when she gets out of the grave, she's like, "What's this in my fruit salad? Is it a fresh pot of souls?" or something like that, which is so good. Put that in Doctor Strange and you get people mad. But or you get to play as, I think, the puppet who's from Ash vs. Evil Dead, which I've still have yet to know what that is. Or you get to play as Evil Ash and have a bunch of skeletons playing the flute and just running around with swords and shields. It's so silly. Just a blast. Real lot of fun. I think it's on like new consoles right now and on PC, only on Epic Game Store, but it is pretty dang good. So, and I think Epic Game Store has like a sale going on where you get like a 25% off coupon just because you have it. So you could get the game for real cheap right now. So definitely give it a try.
I don't really have anything that fun to recommend, except I finally sat down and listened to a podcast that I've been meaning to called King Falls AM. Have I recommended that on the show recently?
You have not. What is it?
So for those of you who know, there's a podcast out there called Welcome to Night Vale, which was the thing on the internet when it came out. It was all over Tumblr. It was one of the first like big podcasts. And what made it unique is that it was an in-universe podcast where it was radio broadcasts from this bizarre place called Night Vale that is both like filled with supernatural and bizarre activity. And you kind of got to piece together bits of the plot from listening to each episode. It's really fascinating. And it was a really great initial example of how the medium of podcasting could be used to tell unique stories. And it launched a whole multimedia franchise. It's beloved and super influential to this day. There's also a lot of media inspired by Night Vale. That's a really great podcast. Please go listen to it. It's a bit of a dive now because it's just been around for so long. However, a more accessible, just a more accessible version of that is called King Falls AM, which was clearly inspired by Night Vale, but takes the route of the story, quote unquote, follows a big city radio DJ who moves to a small town and becomes the co-host of like the local like radio show. Mm-hmm. And so you get these daily episodes from this radio station where the lead guy is slowly realizing this town he's moved to, there's a lot more going on than he anticipated. It tries to do the same thing that Night Vale does, where there's like a tongue-in-cheek, like kind of embracing the mundanity of evil and wickedness kind of thing. I don't think it's always 100% successful with that, but it's a really interesting podcast where you listen to this 15, 16-minute episodes where this big town DJ goes to a small, bizarre town. They include lots of fake commercials for local businesses, which are really charming and cheesy.
It's cool.
There's the mystery of what's really going on. Isn't as engaging as I would like, but the experience of listening to this one guy get just befuddled by a town that may or may not have vampires and werewolves in it is really fun. So if you're looking for a quick 16-minute podcast, because I know so many like Mission to Zix and all these other podcasts and Tales from the Magic City or whatever it's called, like these podcasts tend to have like hour-long episodes. This is a nice like 16-minute like little increments. I listen to it while I'm doing dishes and stuff. So King Falls AM.
Thanks so much for checking out this episode of Cinematic Doctrine. If you enjoyed this episode, consider leaving a review and subscribing to the podcast. And as mentioned before, Cinematic Doctrine has a Patreon. For as little as $3 a month, you're opted into a once-a-month movie poll where you decide a movie we discuss on the podcast. There are other unique benefits that come with supporting the podcast, so be sure to check that out at patreon.com/cinematic doctrine.
A special shout out to those who support at the Art House Theater tier on Patreon. Thank you so much, Mom, Dad, Melanie, Shirley-Ann, and Thomas. You guys are the best, and your continued monetary support is greatly appreciated. Until next time, stay cool. Want some Cinematic Doctrine swag? You're in luck. We've got 3-inch Cinematic Doctrine logo stickers exclusive for Patreon supporters. Perfect for your travel mug or laptop. Head over to patreon.com/Cinematic Doctrine, link in the show notes, and choose the Independent Theater tier. Doing so will net you other perks too. But let's be real, the podcast stickers are the coolest perk. So get yourself some podcast stickers by supporting on Patreon.